Welcome to Free Fiddle Lessons. Today we're going to talk about bow hold. So there are some slightly different ways of holding the bow. And you'll see in fiddle playing all kinds of different ways, some of which are more traditional in the kind of classical world and some of which are not at all. Many people when they're beginning start out by putting their thumb on the bottom. This part is called the frog. On the bottom of the frog, and their fingers over the side and their pinky on top. Like this. You want your hand to be pretty relaxed. And you can see the fingers are curling over the side. The thumb is holding from the bottom. And even here, a bent thumb is good. We'll talk more about the bent thumb for the other thumb position. Sometimes I think you can get away a little bit more with flat, but there's problems with flat thumbs, again, which I'll talk about in a second. And then the pinky sometimes is all the way out on the nut that we use to tighten the bow, the screw, and sometimes the whole thing is a little further in. But especially when your thumb is on the frog, often it's more common to have the pinky out a little bit further. You'll notice that if I point my bow up in the air, my fingers have a slant kind of gently towards the floor. A common thing I see is for the pinky to come over the side and the fingers to tilt up the other way. And I honestly am not even sure how people play that way, but I see that often. But it really interferes with the motion of your wrist and will make your bow go crooked across the strings, which we'll talk about, but that's not desirable. So shifting your hand so your fingers are pointing roughly towards the floor and the pinky's on top is going to give you more success. More advanced players often, not always, I do know a professional player who puts his thumb on the bottom, but most people transition at some point to putting their thumb on the inside, and that can be up on this grip, it can be in the space in between. Sometimes that space is very short. I've occasionally seen people put it inside the frog, but for me that's very uncomfortable, there's not enough space. And this is a very common thing in fiddle playing. People's hands will kind of move up the frog, and so sometimes you might even see somebody holding the bow way up here. My hand creeps up there and then I run out of the bow and then I'm like trying to move it down while I'm playing and it's very awkward. Again, pinky's on top, and here with the thumb moving, up the bow, the rest of the hand's going to move up the bow too. So pinky might be more over here. These two fingers kind of work together, and they're for support and stability. The pointer finger is going to do actually a lot of your bowing work, and the pinky counterbalances everything else. The thumb acts as the access point, the fulcrum, and it's very important for the thumb to be bent. And I really have it, so if you're looking from this side, you can see my thumbnail. You can see I'm bent at an angle, and it might, as I am working with the bow, I might have that bow push out and push in, but I'm using this last bone of the thumb to hold the bow, rather than if your thumb is straight, whether it's on the inside or the outside, you tend to be squeezing then to hold the bow, and when you squeeze, your wrist freezes up. And when your wrist is frozen up, then when you're playing with the bow, you tend to go crooked on the string. You have trouble using your full bow. So having the thumb bent, I've discovered, is really a key, especially if you're trying to play fast. Often people's hands are really tense and their thumb is locked and their wrist is locked and they're just trying to move their whole arm really fast. And what you really want is to be able to have your arm be loose and have all your fingers even in motion while you're using the bow. So I'll demonstrate that more once I have the violin. But thumb is going to act as the fulcrum. It's going to be bent. Fingers are over the side. I have a little space between my pointer finger and the other fingers. Some people don't. I've seen both in classical technique even. I like the space because it gives me more grip for some digging into the string that we'll talk about later. And then the pinky is what lets you pick up the bow off of the string. Without the pinky, the bow falls. So the pinky is counterbalancing this weight of the whole rest of the bow. So it has a really important job. You'll see fiddle players sometimes lifting the lower fingers off the bow while they play, but if you see them pick up the bow, their finger is going to come right back down into play. So you will see this isn't a static position of the bow hand. You'll see that people move the hand if you watch closely. So now that we've got this good setup, we can do some little exercises to try to be moving our wrist. We can go back and forth. We can go up and down. And there you can see even the action of the fingers. I'm slipping on my bow a little bit. I'm not doing this very gracefully. You can move the whole hand up and down. Let's see, I'll try and do it in front of the camera so that the wrist is moving, and you can make this motion much bigger than I'm making it, but I'm losing the camera, I'm sure. So when it comes to putting it together, you have your violin in the whole position that we talked about. Put the bow in the string, that thumb is still bent, and you want to draw the bow parallel to the bridge. This is the bridge here, and that's what's going to give you the best and clearest sound. And it can be really hard to judge. I often see people's bows, let's see, I think like this maybe, and they feel like from their perspective it looks straight, and it's often not, and it's awfully hard to see what is straight. The sound is the bottom line, so if you're getting a sound that you like, then you're probably okay. You could also check in a mirror, and you want to be right about here on the string is a good place to start out. You can play close to the bridge, but it requires more force and skill. And you can play further away, but it's quieter, and there's this kind of wobbly spot right over the end of the fingerboard that doesn't sound very good to me. So very often people's bows will kind of drift away and get stuck in this wobble zone. I don't like it. So you can see a little bit that as I'm moving the bow, the hand needs to move as well. And I would just start out trying to play some open strings. You can bring your hand into this position, which feels very secure. If you're not doing anything with the left hand, you can just bring the hand in. Oh, I was going to mention that if you can't tell if your bow's straight and you're not using a mirror, one thing you can look for is if the bow, the distance between the hair of the bow and the bridge, and if that's changing, then your bow's not parallel to the bridge. You don't actually really want to be touching the strings with your fingers or the hair of the bow, because the natural kind of oil of your hands can get on and cause slippery spots that don't play well. So if you're noticing, oh look, my bow is moving farther away from me, it's not straight. And the problem with that is it gives you this kind of airy sound that can actually be cool for a special effect, but is not what you want most of the time. Does that sound familiar? Sounds like lots of beginning fiddle players. So press into the string, and this is where the pointer finger comes in really handy, is digging into the string. I often, for many strokes, am actually pressing with the pointer finger so the stick moves down closer to the hair, and then as I play, I release the pressure. And that gives a very characteristic crunch at the beginning of the sound, which is very an important sound in lots of different fiddle musics. It's a little harder to achieve on the up bow. Then you can also practice changing strings. And you can practice whether you're crunching or whether you're making a smooth bow. So the other thing that happens is you kind of swell the amount of pressure, and this is really a topic for another video on tone and sound. But often what I'll see is people use the same amount of pressure all the way through the bow. And it gives a sort of deadened sound. If you release the pressure towards the end of the bow stroke, then it lets the sound breathe and sort of swell. I guess swell is not the right word, but it lets the string ring a little bit. Another great thing to practice is putting the bow down on the string and moving the bow. Often people find that their bow bounces, so you want to slow down as you approach the string. And you want to hit the string and go.